Hi everyone. Let's start with the new application and welcome back to the channel. So आज basically हम क्या करेंगे? We have one sample application for Spring using Spring Boot framework. We'll be deploying that application on a container and simultaneously हम एक और container बनाएंगे with a MySQL database running on that and उन दोनों containers को हम link करेंगे. All right. So let me just walk you through this basic application that we have created. इसमें we have only one item controller, जिसमें we are saving the data and we are fetching that data. We have one model which is of item. इसमें we have only three attributes: ID, item name, and description. Then we have item repository just to interact with the database, and then we have the service, which is just the basic thing, saving the data and getting all the data. All right. So first of all, we'll have to create a container on which MySQL service is running. So for now, if you see, no container is running on my system. We do not even have any image which is there. So now what we'll do is we'll first fetch an image from the Docker Hub. So Docker Hub, there's a Docker official image that we'll have to look for. And then when we'll be creating this, we'll be using the latest tag for now, and we'll have to pass in some environmental variables. I'll brief you what all environmental variables do we need. All right, so let's first put Docker run. So we are directly pulling the image and running the image and creating a container out of it. And then we'll have to pass the port. So for now, 3306 is the default port for MySQL. We'll pass. So 3306 jo before the colon and that is for the local. All the traffic on our 3306 port on my laptop will be redirected to the 3306 port on the container that will be created. Also, I will have to mention the name. This is not mandatory, but this is good to have thing. So we'll have to write here, let me name it MySQL container. Now I'll have to pass in some environmental variables which I can fetch from here. So these are some environmental variables which are required. So one is this. So MySQL root password, let me have it as pass. Then we have another one as MySQL database. So MySQL database, let me have it as testdb. Then we have the other one is MySQL user. Let me have it as test hyphen user. And then we have the last one as MySQL password. And then because I want the same level of access, I am using the same password which I have mentioned in the MySQL root password. All right. So isme then I'll have to pass in the image name. So image name is something that you will find it here, MySQL image. And then इसके अलावा we do not require anything else because बाकी सारी जो properties है those are non mandatory because I've already chosen the ones which are mandatory. ठीक है, तो now if I just go through it, Docker run, we are mapping the ports from my local laptop to the container. We are naming the container, and then we are passing the environmental variables, and then we are passing in the image. So we can also use a tag like this, but if you do not specify a tag, it will automatically fetch the latest image from here. So this is the one which will be pulled in. Okay, now let me run this. So I don't want any output from the container, so I'll just run this in a detached state. So hyphen D is for detached state. I'll run this. It will pull the image from the Docker Hub. So while this is coming up, I'll walk you through the Dockerfile. So Dockerfile, maybe we are not doing anything fancy. We have a base image. So we require three basic things. One is when the container is created, what would be the OS that would be installed, and OS के ऊपर क्या चीज install होगी. So OpenJDK is the image that we'll be using as a base image. So if you see OpenJDK में they automatically, if I show you description, once you install OpenJDK, they will automatically have the Linux installed on it. So you can go through the documentation of it. All right. So I'll be using OpenJDK. The next step is that we'll be copying everything from the target folder which has an extension of jar, and we'll be renaming it to Spring application that would be copied over to the container. Once the container is created, this is the command that would be executed. So generally, if you run a Java application, Spring Boot application, you have to write Java space hyphen jar space the name of the jar. But in this case, since you cannot use spaces, you have to write comma separated words. So you have to write Java comma hyphen jar comma and then name of the jar. So So this is the name that we have renamed to. Okay. Now before doing that, we'll have to check what is the properties that we are expecting. So server.port is something 8082 we have already mentioned. The second is that we have to identify the data source. So data source is something that we'll have to identify from here. So this, if you notice that this is the name of the container that we have passed in. Okay, so this is something we'll have to mention here, because when our once our container will come up, it will look for another container, and that is why we need to mention this. We can even mention the IP of this. So in order to identify the IP of this, so this image is now created and the container is now created. Now we can identify it using Docker PS, and if you see that this is now running. Previously it was not showing any output if you check here, but it is now showing an output. Now let me just check Docker inspect, and then I pass in the container ID. Once I do that, you can notice that IP would be here. Okay, and then the port that we explicitly mentioned is here, and then all the environmental properties that we passed in are here. So these are the test db user, test hyphen user, pass and pass. All these things are already there. All right. So this is something we'll have to mention here. So this is the name of the container that we mentioned. This is the port. This is the database name. This is the username, test user, and then password is as pass. So this is what we have created. Now we'll have to create a jar file for this, because we do not have a jar file for now. We'll use mvn command for this. Mvn clean install, and I will skip the test for now. Skip tests equal to true. So as soon as I execute this command, you'll notice that the target folder will be created, and then we have the jar here with the name of demo 001 in the target folder. And if you go back to the Docker file, you will see that any jar which is present in the target folder will be replaced, will be renamed and copied over to the container. Okay. Now, since I just created a jar, I have not created an image for the application. So if you write Docker images, we only have one image, which is MySQL image, जो कि हमने container में भी create किया है. अभी हमारी application की image नहीं बनी है. So we'll have to create the image first. So we'll use Docker build. This is something you have to execute जहाँ पर भी मतलब the location should be जहाँ पर आपकी Docker file placed है. So if you see, we have Docker file placed here. So this is the Docker file which is placed here in the same directory. I'll have to write Docker build hyphen t. I write the tag of the hyphen t is for tag. So I'll write spring hyphen application, and then I can provide the version number for this. So let me add 1.0, and then I need to specify dot. Dot is something for this to identify the Docker file in the entire directory. As soon as I hit enter, this will start creating an image. This will take a couple of minutes, because this will create all the images for us, and then one image out of all the images. All right. So if you notice that now the execution of the command is completed. Now if I do Docker images, I will get two images. One is for the MySQL and one is for the Spring application that we have created. All right. Now I'll have to create a container out of it. So for now, if you see, we only have one container running, which is the MySQL container. Now we'll have to run a new container with the Spring application. So what we'll have to do is Docker run. Again, we'll have to mention the port. So 8082, 8082. If you notice that this port is basically the same port that I mentioned here, which is on which the application is running. Okay, so I'm now redirecting all the traffic 808 from the port 8082 on my local machine to the container. Okay, then I'll have to mention hyphen hyphen link, because I want to link this container with a container on which MySQL is running. So I'll just pass in the link command. I'll also specify a name for this container. Let me specify Spring application, and then I'll have to write the image name. So image ID. So I'll pass in this. Okay. So we have passed the port. We have passed the name of the container to which this container should link once it is up. And then we'll have to pass in the name of this container, which is not mandatory. And then we'll pass the image ID. As soon as I hit enter, and please notice that I did not use hyphen D this time. That is why I'm getting the output from the container. and if you notice, the application is now running. Okay, now if I go and check, we do not have any data in the database, right? So now what we'll have to do is, using this item slash all, the API that I have created, item slash all, the items are, there are no items in the database right now. So now we'll have to create one. So I have this template ready. I will just insert a data. Okay, so now I save the data, and since the status is 200, and now if I try to fetch the data, I get the data in response, and then using the all ID. All right, now if I try to add one more data, let me add post as 2. So this is the second one I'm doing. I save it, okay response, and then I get the output as, I get two IDs this time. All right, so this is how it's working. Please do like, share, and subscribe my channel, and please give me suggestions on the comment box in case you have any on which I can create a new video. Thank you guys.